My rich neighbor's black belt son walked across the street, threw his MMA gloves at my husband's feet, and shouted, "Fight me!" Nearly 40 neighbors fell silent. Before David could bend down, I put my hand on his arm, picked up the gloves myself, and smiled. For a second, nobody said anything. Even the kids chasing each other around the picnic tables stopped running. Logan Mercer grinned like he'd just told the funniest joke in Tennessee. "Well," he said loudly, "guess your husband needs his wife to save him." A few uncomfortable chuckles drifted through the crowd. David sighed beside me. He wasn't embarrassed because Logan had challenged him. He was embarrassed because everyone else had to witness it. I turned the gloves over in my hands. They were expensive, clean, barely broken in, the kind of gloves someone bought as much for the cameras as for the gym. I looked at Logan. "I'll let you know," I said. His smile widened. "Take your time." I handed the gloves back. He snatched them away, laughing as he walked toward a group of young men already filming him with their phones. David leaned closer. "Rachel, I'm fine. You shouldn't have picked those up." "I know. But thank you." I smiled without answering. Because the truth was, I wasn't sure whether picking them up had been the smartest thing I'd done all year, or the dumbest. If you'd met me that morning, you never would have guessed any of this was coming. My day had started the same way most mornings did. At 5:30, my knees woke me before my alarm. Not me, my knees. Arthritis has a funny way of announcing itself before the rest of your body catches up. I swung my legs over the edge of the bed and waited. Always waited. If I stood too quickly, my right knee would remind me exactly how many birthdays I'd celebrated. David was still asleep. I shuffled into the kitchen, started the coffee, and looked out our back window toward the maple tree we'd planted the year we moved to Franklin. 23 years. That tree had grown taller than the roof. Some mornings I thought it had aged better than I had. David wandered in wearing his old Vanderbilt sweatshirt. "You beat me again. I cheat." "You always have." He kissed my forehead before pouring coffee. Simple mornings, quiet mornings. Those had become my favorite kind. After 19 years teaching close combat skills in the military, silence felt like a reward I'd earned. I'd promised myself retirement would stay peaceful. No more yelling, no more proving anything, no more violence unless there was absolutely no other choice. For nearly 6 years, I'd kept that promise. Then Logan Mercer moved in across the street. When Victor Mercer bought the house, everyone thought we were getting another retired couple. Instead, we got Victor. His 28-year-old son, 3 sports cars, a lifted pickup that barely fit in the driveway, and enough noise to keep the entire subdivision awake. Victor owned luxury car dealerships around Nashville. He wasn't shy about reminding people. Logan wasn't shy about anything. At first, it was annoying. Engines revving before sunrise, music loud enough to rattle windows, parking halfway across sidewalks. Then it became personal. He'd block Mr. Donnelly's mailbox because the mailman needs exercise. He'd leave shopping carts in front of Mrs. Peterson's driveway. He once filmed himself pretending to race 70-year-old Mr. Hayes across the grocery store parking lot. The clip got thousands of views online. Mr. Hayes never laughed, neither did his wife. David always said the same thing. He'll grow up eventually. I wasn't nearly as optimistic. One Saturday afternoon, I found David repainting our mailbox. Again. "The third time this year?" I asked. He shrugged. "Teenagers." I crouched beside him. "That wasn't teenagers." He didn't answer. Instead, he kept brushing white paint across the wood. Finally, he sighed. "Logan backed into it. Accident." He said it was. "You believe him?" "No." "Then why didn't you report it?" David rinsed the brush. "Because I don't want to spend retirement arguing with a 28-year-old. That was David. He believed peace usually cost less than pride. Most days, he was right. Everything changed at the neighborhood 4th of July barbecue. Sarah Kim, our HOA president, had organized the event at the community clubhouse. Kids splashed in the pool, country music floated through speakers. Somebody had brought enough smoked brisket to feed half the county. Neighbors wandered between picnic tables carrying paper plates loaded with barbecue, baked beans, and potato salad. It felt like every summer gathering we'd ever attended. Until Logan decided it was his stage. He was showing off for 3 young men filming him. One of them held a camera mounted on a stabilizer. The other kept saying, "Bro, this is gonna blow up." Logan spotted David talking with 2 retired teachers. He smiled, not a friendly smile, the kind that usually meant someone else's afternoon was about to get worse. He walked straight over, reached into his gym bag, pulled out those black MMA gloves, then tossed them onto the grass at David's feet. "Ladies and gentlemen," Logan announced loudly enough for nearly everyone to hear, "I've got a challenge." David blinked. "What are you talking about?" "You've been hiding behind your wife long enough." "I don't even know you." "You don't have to." Logan pointed toward the gloves. "Pick them up." Several people exchanged nervous looks. Sarah started walking over. Victor didn't move. He stood near the grill wearing an expensive polo shirt, smiling like this was entertainment. David slowly bent his knees. Not because he wanted to fight, because he was simply trying to hand the gloves back. I touched his arm. "Don't." He looked at me, then I bent down instead, picked up the gloves, brushed a little grass off one of them. Logan laughed. "You?" I looked him directly in the eyes. I said, "I'll let you know." For the first time, his smile flickered. Just for a heartbeat, almost like he'd expected fear, not calm. That evening after dinner, David sat beside me on our back porch. "I'm sorry," I frowned. "For what?" "You got dragged into something that should have been mine." I reached over and squeezed his hand. "No." "It was." "No, David." I looked across the street. Logan's garage door was open. Bright studio lights shined inside. He was already editing the video. "I think this stopped being about you a long time ago." Around 9 that night, my phone buzzed. A neighbor texted me a link. There we were. The title read, "Old Man Too Scared to Fight, His Wife Steps In, Thousands of Views," and climbing. I quietly set my phone down, walked into the garage, pulled a dusty keyring from an old toolbox, then unlocked a steel military footlocker tucked beneath a workbench. The hinges groaned as the lid opened. Inside were worn notebooks, training manuals filled with handwritten notes, a faded instructor's patch, and memories I'd spent years trying to leave behind. I stood there for a long time without touching any of it. Then I whispered something I hadn't said in years. "I hoped I'd never need you again." The next morning, I woke before my knees did. That almost never happened. For a few seconds, I lay still in the dark, staring at the ceiling and listening to David breathe beside me. The house was quiet. No engines outside, no phones buzzing, no neighbors whispering about a video. Just quiet. Then I remembered the footlocker sitting open in the garage. I closed my eyes. There are things you can pack away without truly leaving behind. Uniforms, photographs, old injuries, names you still remember at 3 a.m. David stirred. "You awake?" "Unfortunately." He rolled toward me. "You were in the garage a long time." "I know." "What did you find?" "Mostly dust." He waited. David had been married to me long enough to know when I was using humor as a locked door. Finally, he said, "You don't have to prove anything to that kid." "I'm aware." "Are you?" That landed harder than I wanted it to. I pushed myself upright and pain ran through my right knee before my foot touched the floor. David noticed. He always noticed. He sat up beside me. "Rachel." "I'm not planning to fight him." "Good. I'm planning to understand what he's doing." That sentence worries me almost as much. I smiled despite myself. Coffee first, I said. I spent 19 years teaching people how to stay alive when fear made them stupid. That was the simplest way to explain my old job. I taught restraint holds, defensive movement, close quarters control, and how to make decisions when someone was screaming 6 inches from your face. Most of the people I trained were younger, stronger, and faster than I was. That never bothered me. Strength mattered. Timing mattered more. Judgment mattered most. At least that was what I believed until one of my best trainees proved that skill without character was just another weapon. His name was Darren Cole. 24 years old. Quick learner, smart, funny, the kind of young man who remembered everyone's birthday and volunteered for extra duty without being asked. He also liked people to know he was dangerous. I saw it early, the little smirk after he put someone on the mat. The way he pushed half a second longer than necessary. The jokes about what he could do in a bar if somebody tested him. I pulled him aside after training one afternoon. "You're not learning this to win arguments," I told him. "I know, Sergeant Morgan." "You say that too quickly," he smiled. "Yes, ma'am." 6 months later, he got into a fight outside a nightclub. The other man survived, but his jaw didn't heal right. Neither did Darren's career. I visited him after the hearing. He couldn't look at me. "I thought I had control," he said. "No," I told him. "You thought control meant being able to hurt someone." That sentence stayed with me because I had helped give him the tools. After that, I stopped admiring talent without discipline. And when I retired, I promised myself I wouldn't be drawn back into proving what I knew. Not for pride, not for anger, not because some loud young man needed an audience. By 10 that morning, Logan's video had passed 50,000 views. David had gone to the hardware store, and I was trimming basil on the back patio when someone knocked on the front door. A teenage boy stood on the porch. I recognized him as Ethan Brooks from 2 streets over, 17 maybe, thin, nervous, wearing a Franklin High baseball cap pulled low. "Mrs. Morgan?" "Yes?" He looked over his shoulder toward the Mercer house. "Can I talk to you?" I stepped aside. He didn't sit when I offered. He stood near the kitchen table, twisting the cap in his hands. "You saw Logan's video?" I asked. He nodded. "I've been in some of his videos." I waited. He calls them challenges, but they're not always real. "What does that mean?" Ethan swallowed. "He tells people what to do, where to stand, when to fall. Sometimes he pays them. Sometimes he just threatens to post stuff about them if they don't cooperate." "What kind of stuff?" "Embarrassing clips, edited clips, anything that makes you look weak." His voice dropped. "He made me spar with him last winter, said it would be light. Then he kept going after I asked him to stop." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "Were you hurt?" "Nothing serious." That answer usually means serious enough. "Did you tell your parents?" "My dad wanted to call the police. Then Mr. Mercer came over and said it would ruin my college applications if people thought I'd started a fight." "Did you?" "No, ma'am." He looked ashamed, even though none of it belonged to him. "Why are you telling me now?" Ethan stared at the floor. "Because you picked up the gloves." Such a small action. I hadn't meant it as courage, but maybe courage sometimes looks larger from across the street. "You need to tell your parents everything," I said. "And don't delete any messages." He nodded. As he reached the door, he turned back. "Are you really going to fight him?" "No." The answer came fast, too fast. Ethan studied me, then left. That afternoon, Sarah Kim called. "Can you come to the clubhouse?" "What happened?" "I found something." Sarah was waiting in the small HOA office with her laptop open. The room smelled faintly of printer toner and lemon cleaner. She clicked on a security recording from the camera mounted above the community mailbox pavilion. The timestamp showed 2:13 a.m. Logan's truck rolled into frame. He got out carrying a baseball bat. Then he struck 2 mailboxes, looked directly toward the camera, and pulled his hood lower. A second clip showed him leaving a shopping cart against Mrs. Peterson's garage door. A third showed him spray painting an orange stripe across David's mailbox. Sarah paused the video. "I didn't know the camera angle reached that far," I said. "It was installed after the package thefts last Christmas." "Why hasn't anyone acted on this?" "Because Victor's attorney sends letters whenever the HOA mentions Logan." She folded her arms. "Most people back down." I watched the frozen image of Logan standing beside our mailbox. "He counts on that." Sarah nodded. "So what are you going to do?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A neighborhood email had arrived. At the top was a glossy flyer with Logan posing in a fighting stance. Mercer Motors Community Charity Exhibition. Beneath the date and location, one line had been added in bright red letters. "Still waiting for the history teacher." Sarah read it over my shoulder. "Well," she said quietly, "he just made it public." I stared at the screen while my knee throbbed under the table. For the first time, I understood that Logan wasn't going to get bored. He was going to keep pushing until someone gave him the reaction he wanted. The only question was whether I could stop him without becoming part of the show. For 3 days, I avoided answering the challenge. Not because I was afraid of Logan, because I was afraid of myself. Every time I drove past the community clubhouse, I imagined stepping into that ring. Then I'd imagine waking up the next morning unable to straighten my knee, wondering why a 52-year-old woman had let a 28-year-old bully drag her back into a life she'd spent years trying to leave. David never pressured me. That somehow made it harder. He trusted me enough to make my own decision. I wasn't sure I trusted myself. Life, however, has a way of making decisions for you. It happened on a Thursday afternoon at Kroger. I was loading groceries into my SUV when I heard shouting near the entrance. Logan. He was towering over a teenage employee wearing a green apron. The poor kid couldn't have been older than 18. I said those weren't the drinks I ordered. They're what was on the receipt, sir. You calling me a liar? People slowed down but kept walking. Nobody wanted to get involved. I understood why. Bullies don't just scare one person. They train everyone else to look away. Before I realized I was moving, I was already halfway across the parking lot. "Logan," he turned. "Oh," he grinned. "The celebrity." The teenager looked relieved just to see another adult standing nearby. I picked up one of the grocery bags that had fallen onto the pavement. "Looks like he made a mistake." "He wasted my time." "No," I handed the bag to the employee. "He made a mistake." There was a difference. Logan stepped closer. "You really think you're going to embarrass me?" "I'm trying to keep you from embarrassing yourself." He laughed loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Still thinking about our fight?" "No. I'm thinking about that young man." The employee quietly slipped back inside the store. Logan shook his head. "You know what's funny?" "What?" "Everybody in this neighborhood suddenly thinks you're some kind of hero." "I don't." "You will after I make an example out of you." He walked away before I answered. I stood there watching him climb into his bright red Corvette. The engine roared as he sped through the parking lot. A shopping cart rolled across the asphalt behind him. Nobody said a word. That evening I sat alone on our back porch. The summer air smelled like fresh-cut grass and charcoal from somebody's grill. David came outside carrying 2 glasses of iced tea. "You've been quiet." "I've been thinking." "That's usually dangerous." I smiled. "You always know when to make me laugh." He sat beside me. "What did Logan do this time?" I told him about Kroger. David rubbed his forehead. "He just keeps pushing." "Yes, but fighting him won't fix that." "I know." He looked at me carefully. Then what are you really trying to do? That question stayed with me for a long time. Finally, I answered. I'm trying to make sure the next person he humiliates isn't too frightened to stand up. David nodded slowly. I can understand that. But I'm worried about you. So am I. That surprised him. I thought you were certain. I haven't been certain about anything since I opened that footlocker. We sat together without speaking. After 29 years of marriage, silence had become one of our favorite conversations. The next morning my phone rang. Sarah Kim. You busy? I can be. Deputy Alvarez is here. 15 minutes later, I was sitting inside the HOA office. Deputy Mike Alvarez slid a folder across the table. I probably shouldn't be showing you all this. Then why are you? Because nobody else seems willing to speak. Inside were complaint summaries, damaged property, harassment, threats. Most ended the same way. Complainant declined further action. They're afraid of Victor, I said. Mike nodded. His attorneys send letters. Does that work? Usually, Sarah folded her arms. It shouldn't. Deputy Alvarez leaned forward. If this exhibition goes ahead, I want it done properly. What do you mean? No backyard circus. He counted on his fingers. Licensed referee. Medical staff. Liability waivers. Security. No surprises. I wasn't planning surprises. I know, he smiled. I'm talking about Logan. By Saturday afternoon, the charity committee held an open planning meeting at the clubhouse. The room was packed. Logan walked in wearing a Mercer Motors polo shirt and sunglasses indoors. Victor followed behind him, shaking hands like he was running for mayor. When Sarah opened the meeting, Logan didn't wait 5 minutes before standing. So, he smiled toward me, has Mrs. Morgan decided yet? Dozens of people turned. I could feel David tense beside me. I stood slowly. Every joint reminded me exactly how old I was. I have. The room became very quiet. I'll participate. Logan laughed. I knew it. I raised one finger. Under my conditions. His smile faded. What conditions? No unsanctioned fight. I looked directly at the event organizers. I want a licensed referee. Certified EMTs. Liability waivers signed by both participants. No personal camera crews inside the ring. Independent video recording only. Any advertising revenue from the event goes to the Veterans Center and Franklin Youth Athletics. A man from the charity committee blinked. That's actually reasonable. Victor frowned. Seems excessive. Deputy Alvarez spoke before I could. No, he looked straight at Victor. It seems responsible. The room murmured in agreement. Logan shrugged. Fine. He spread his hands dramatically. Makes no difference to me. It should have. Because for the first time since this whole mess started, he wasn't controlling the stage anymore. Training began the following Monday. If Logan imagined me running hills before sunrise and punching heavy bags, he would have been disappointed. My first workout lasted 11 minutes. After that, my shoulders started burning. By minute 13, my knee felt like someone had wedged a screwdriver into the joint. I sat on a bench outside the Franklin Recreation Complex, wondering whether I'd lost my mind. An older man walking past smiled. First day back? It shows? He laughed. I've been saying first day back every Monday for 6 years. I laughed too. Sometimes strangers give you exactly what you need without realizing it. The next day I managed 15 minutes, then 18, then 22. I wasn't getting younger, I was getting steadier. There was a difference. 3 nights later, Sarah called again. I found something. What is it? You need to come see this. She had Logan's public channel open on her laptop. Beside it were emails she'd received from 2 former sponsors. One sentence caught my attention immediately. Several promotional matches appear to have been staged. Sarah clicked another file. A former training partner claimed Logan had paid inexperienced opponents to exaggerate his reputation online. Another admitted he'd intentionally taken a fall during a viral challenge. I leaned back slowly. So, he isn't nearly as unbeatable as he wants people to believe. No, I closed the laptop. But he spent years convincing everyone he is. Outside the clubhouse window, I could hear children laughing at the playground. Inside, I realized something important. The hardest thing Logan was about to lose wasn't a fight. It was the image he'd built his entire life around. By the morning of the exhibition, I hadn't slept much. Not because I was nervous about Logan, because I was worried I'd disappoint David, or worse, I'd disappoint myself. I stood in the kitchen, rubbing arthritis cream into my right knee while the coffee brewed. The familiar smell filled the room. David came downstairs wearing jeans and a navy polo. He looked at me for a long moment. "You don't have to do this." "I know. You can still call Sarah." "I know." He stepped closer. "I'll support whatever you decide." I smiled. "I've already decided." He nodded once, then he kissed my forehead. I figured. The charity event drew far more people than anyone expected. The parking lot at the Franklin Community Athletic Center was already overflowing when we arrived. Pickup trucks lined the grass along the entrance road. Families carried folding chairs. Kids chased each other across the baseball field. A local barbecue restaurant had donated pulled pork sandwiches. The high school marching band was warming up near the concession stand. If someone hadn't told you there would be a martial arts exhibition later that afternoon, you would have thought it was just another Tennessee summer fundraiser. Deputy Mike Alvarez met us near the registration tent. "Morning, morning." He handed both Logan and me identical liability waivers. "Please read everything." I actually did. Logan didn't. He signed his without looking up. Deputy Alvarez noticed. "So did you read it?" "I've signed 1,000 waivers." "This one's different." Logan shrugged. "I'm still signing." Mike simply nodded. "That's your choice." Nearby, 2 EMTs finished checking their medical bags. Inside the gymnasium, a licensed referee introduced himself. "My name's Alan Foster." Gray hair, calm voice, former amateur boxing official. "I've been told both participants understand this is an exhibition." We both answered yes. "If I stop the match..." He looked at Logan first. "It's over." Then he looked at me. "No arguments." Understood. The gym filled quickly. Nearly every seat was taken. People who had never attended an HOA meeting suddenly cared very deeply about neighborhood politics. Local reporters stood near the back wall. A television camera from Nashville quietly recorded interviews with charity volunteers. Sarah walked over carrying a clipboard. "You okay?" "I've been better." "You still have time." "I know." She lowered her voice. "For what it's worth, I'm glad you made him do this the right way. So am I." Logan made his entrance first. Music blasted through the speakers. His supporters cheered loudly. He slapped hands with people along the aisle before climbing through the ropes like he was entering a championship fight. The crowd loved it. At least half of them. Then my name was announced. No music, no spotlight, just Rachel Morgan. I walked toward the ring wearing plain black training shoes, dark athletic pants, and a faded gray t-shirt. Nothing fancy, nothing designed for social media, just comfortable clothes. Someone in the crowd whispered, "That's it?" I almost laughed. They were expecting someone who looked dangerous. Life had taught me long ago that appearances usually lied. The referee called us together. "You know the rules." He looked at Logan. "No striking after I call break." He looked at me. "No intentional joint damage." We touched gloves. Logan leaned closer. You still have time to quit. I had that yesterday. And? I drove home instead. He smirked. I'll try not to embarrass you too badly, I answered quietly. I hope you remember saying that. The bell sounded. Logan exploded forward, fast, much faster than I remembered people moving. His first combination never landed because I wasn't trying to trade punches. I stepped sideways, then backward, again. The crowd immediately started murmuring, "She's running!" "No," an older man a few rows behind David answered. "She's making him chase." Logan smiled. "You can't keep that up." Maybe not, but neither could he. He attacked again, harder, faster. Every movement forced me to pivot. Every pivot reminded me that my knee wasn't 30 anymore. Pain shot through my leg. I hit it, barely, 30 seconds, 45, a minute. Logan still hadn't landed anything meaningful. He grew irritated. Good. Angry fighters make expensive mistakes. Then my right foot slipped slightly on the canvas. Not much. Enough. Logan drove forward. His shoulder caught my chest. I stumbled backward and landed awkwardly against the ropes. The gym gasped. David actually stood up. "Rachel!" The referee stepped closer, ready to intervene if necessary. Logan backed away just enough to grin. "Tired already?" I ignored him. My knee hurt, badly, for one frightening second. I wondered whether the match should end. The referee quietly asked, "You okay?" I nodded. He searched my face. "You sure?" "Yes." He motioned us forward. The second round felt twice as long. Logan realized I wasn't going to attack. So he started performing, looking toward the cameras, talking, laughing, throwing spinning techniques that looked spectacular, and accomplished very little. The younger people in the audience cheered. The older veterans sitting together near the back didn't. One of them quietly muttered, "Too much showing off." Exactly. My breathing stayed controlled. His didn't. Sweat rolled down his forehead. His shoulders rose higher every time he inhaled. Years ago, I'd watched hundreds of young soldiers make exactly the same mistake. They confused movement with efficiency. I heard my own voice from decades earlier echo inside my head. Slow is smooth, smooth becomes fast. Logan rushed again. This time he wanted a dramatic takedown. I could see it coming before he committed. Not because I was faster, because he telegraphed everything. He lowered his level, committed all his weight, and drove forward. I stepped just enough to redirect his momentum. Nothing flashy, no miracle technique, just timing. His shoulder slid past my hip. His balance disappeared. He hit one knee. I immediately secured a simple front control position. Not painful, not dangerous, just stable. The crowd became strangely quiet. Logan tried exploding upward. Nothing. He twisted left. Nothing. He forced his weight backward. I adjusted. Every escape attempt cost him more energy. The referee watched closely. "Improve your position, Logan." Logan strained harder. His breathing became ragged. He wasn't trapped because I was stronger. He was trapped because he kept choosing power over patience. After nearly 20 seconds of unsuccessful escape attempts, the referee stepped in. "Stop!" He separated us immediately. I released the hold before he even touched my shoulder. Logan stayed on one knee, breathing heavily. The gym remained silent. Then Alan Foster raised my hand. "Winner by referee stoppage." For 2 full seconds, nobody moved. Then applause rolled across the gym. Not wild cheering, not screaming, just respectful applause, the kind people give when they've witnessed something they didn't expect. I looked down at Logan. He still hadn't stood. I offered him my hand. He stared at it, then looked away. "I don't need help." "No," I said softly, "but everyone does sometimes." He stood without taking it. As I climbed out of the ring, my legs started shaking, not from fear, from exhaustion. David reached me just outside the ropes. Without saying a word, he wrapped one arm around my shoulders. "You okay?" I laughed weakly. "Ask me tomorrow." He smiled through watery eyes. I've never been prouder of you." Before I could answer, I noticed 3 people walking toward Deputy Alvarez: Mr. Donnelly, Mrs. Peterson, and Ethan Brooks. Each carried a folder. Each looked nervous, but none of them turned around. For the first time, they weren't afraid anymore. I expected the phone calls, I just didn't expect so many. By 8 o'clock the next morning, 3 local reporters had left voicemail messages. 2 podcasts wanted interviews. A regional television station asked if I'd appear on a segment about standing up to bullies. I declined every one of them. David listened while I deleted the messages over breakfast. "You don't even want to think about it?" "No. You could probably inspire a lot of people." "I didn't do that for cameras." He smiled into his coffee. "I know. And if I start enjoying the attention?" I shrugged. "I'll become exactly what I was trying to stop." He nodded. "That's why you won." I looked at him. "No. We won." Franklin is the kind of town where news travels faster than traffic. By Monday afternoon, people weren't talking about the match anymore. They were talking about everything that came before it. Deputy Alvarez called. "We've got statements." "How many?" 8. I stopped watering the tomatoes. 8? So far. What changed? They watched somebody stand up to him. His answer stayed with me long after we hung up. Sometimes courage isn't contagious because people suddenly become brave. Sometimes they're simply tired of being afraid. Sarah stopped by later that afternoon carrying a thick accordion folder. "I've been busy." "I can see that." She spread documents across our dining room table: HOA complaints, repair invoices, security camera timestamps, copies of warning letters from Victor's attorneys. There were far more than I'd imagined. "People saved everything," I said. "They just never believed it would matter." Sarah pointed to a stack of emails. "After Saturday," they started forwarding me everything. One message caught my eye. It came from a sporting goods company that had sponsored Logan's channel. Their legal department wanted clarification regarding misleading promotional content. Another email came from a regional fitness supplement company, then another. "They're all asking questions," Sarah said. "Yes. They're wondering whether Logan's reputation was manufactured." I leaned back. "I don't need to answer that." "No," she smiled. "The evidence already does." 3 days later, the Williamson Herald published a front-page story. Not about me, about Logan. The headline read, "Local influencer faces questions over staged fight videos." The article included interviews with former training partners. One admitted he had intentionally exaggerated Logan's abilities in promotional clips. Another said he'd been paid to lose quickly during a so-called open challenge. None of it accused Logan of being untalented. It accused him of building a false image. That distinction mattered. Logan really was skilled, just not invincible. Victor didn't take the article well. He held an impromptu press conference outside one of his dealerships. "I've built my businesses with integrity." He smiled stiffly at the cameras. "My son is the victim of jealousy." The reporters immediately started asking about the HOA complaints. Victor ended the event in less than 4 minutes. By evening, the clip was circulating online. Not because people believed him, because they didn't. A week after the match, I found Logan sitting alone at Pinkerton Park. No cameras. No entourage, just him on a bench overlooking Harpeth River. I almost kept walking. Instead, I sat on the opposite end of the bench. Neither of us spoke for nearly a minute. Finally, he said, "You here to enjoy the view?" "It's a nice view." He laughed quietly. "Everybody suddenly hates me." "No." He looked over. "No." "They're disappointed." He stared at the river. "I don't really know the difference." I think you do. Silence settled between us again. A pair of ducks drifted lazily across the water. Children laughed somewhere behind us near the playground. Logan rubbed his hands together. I watched the match again. I figured you might. You could have hurt me. Yes. You didn't. No. Why? I thought about that before answering. Because once someone is helpless, I looked at him. The lesson is already over, he frowned. I don't understand. I wasn't trying to beat you. He looked genuinely confused. I was trying to stop you. His shoulders dropped. For the first time since I'd met him, he looked 28 instead of 14. My dad always said... He stopped. What? That people only respect strength. And do you still believe him? He didn't answer. That was answer enough. As I stood to leave, he quietly asked, Do you hate me? I turned back. No. I would have understood if you did. I've met too many angry people to waste time becoming one. He watched me walk away. He never called after me. Victor, however, wasn't finished. If anything, he became more determined. 2 days later, every homeowner received an email. Special emergency HOA meeting, mandatory attendance requested. Agenda, conduct of Rachel Morgan and defamation against the Mercer family. David read it twice. He actually sent this. Looks that way. He thinks people are on his side? I don't think he knows they've already made up their minds. David looked toward the folder Sarah had left with us. You bringing all that? I wasn't planning to. But, I smiled faintly, if someone accuses me publicly, I should probably bring the truth. That evening, Sarah stopped by with one more envelope. What's this? The last piece. I opened it. Inside were certified copies of sponsorship agreements obtained during a civil records request. Highlighted in yellow were clauses requiring Logan to maintain an authentic competitive record. I slowly looked up. This changes things. Sarah nodded. It certainly changes tomorrow night's meeting. After she left, I placed every document into a single blue binder. Not because I wanted revenge, because facts deserve to travel together. The next evening I carried that binder into the HOA clubhouse. Victor was already standing at the front of the room, smiling. He had absolutely no idea what was inside it. The HOA clubhouse hadn't been that full since the Christmas decorating contest 3 years earlier. People stood along the back wall because every chair was taken. Neighbors who usually avoided meetings had shown up anyway. Curiosity has a way of filling a room. David squeezed my hand before we walked inside. You ready? No, he smiled. Good, I looked at him. Why's that good? Because people who think they're always ready usually miss something. I laughed softly. I married a history teacher. You married a man who grades overconfident essays for a living. That helped, more than he probably realized. Victor Mercer stood at the front beside the projector screen. Expensive gray suit, perfect smile, confident posture. If you hadn't known him, you would have assumed he was about to announce a scholarship fund instead of trying to destroy a neighbor's reputation. Logan sat alone in the second row. No sunglasses, no camera crew, no gym bag, just a young man staring at the floor. Sarah called the meeting to order. As everyone knows, Mr. Mercer requested tonight's special session. Victor stood immediately. Thank you. He looked around the room with practiced confidence. For weeks, my family has been the target of false accusations, public humiliation, and an organized effort to destroy my son's future. Nobody interrupted. He continued. My son participated in a charity event in good faith. He lost. That happens. But since then, he pointed toward me. Mrs. Morgan has encouraged lies, damaged business relationships, and turned this neighborhood against us. Several people exchanged puzzled looks. Victor mistook their silence for agreement. I've spent 35 years building successful businesses. My family deserves an apology. He finally sat down. Sarah looked toward me. Mrs. Morgan? I stood slowly. The arthritis in my knee reminded me it was going to rain tomorrow. Funny the things you notice during important moments. I don't have a speech. That was true. I only brought facts. I placed the blue binder on the table, opened it, and removed the first document. This, I said, is a repair invoice for Mr. Donnelly's mailbox. I handed copies to the HOA board. Next, Mrs. Peterson's security photos, then Ethan's written statement. Then HOA camera stills showing Logan damaging property after midnight. Victor leaned forward. Those images prove nothing. Sarah calmly replied, the original recordings were verified and preserved. I continued. These are formal complaints submitted over the last 3 years. The stack was almost 2 inches thick. People in the audience started whispering. Many hadn't realized how many neighbors had quietly filed reports. I looked around the room. Most of these complaints went nowhere. Not because they weren't true, because people believed speaking up wouldn't change anything. The room became very quiet. Victor stood again. This is character assassination. No, I answered. It's documentation. His jaw tightened. You've turned one athletic competition into a personal vendetta. I didn't organize the competition. You accepted it. After your son publicly challenged my husband. A woman near the back nodded. I was there. Another voice spoke up. So was I. Then another. And me. For the first time all evening, Victor realized he wasn't arguing with one person anymore. He was arguing with an entire neighborhood. I reached into the binder one last time. This came from one of Logan's former sponsors. I held up the agreement. It requires promotional material to accurately represent competitive achievements. Sarah displayed the highlighted section on the projector. Another page followed. Then another. Emails, statements, former training partners describing staged promotional matches. Not fake fights, but carefully edited ones that exaggerated Logan's reputation. I looked toward Victor. Your son didn't need any of this. He was already talented. You taught him that talent alone wasn't enough. Victor's face reddened. That's ridiculous. Is it? Nobody answered for him. Then something happened that I never saw coming. A chair scraped across the floor. Logan stood. His father turned. Sit down. Logan didn't. I said sit down. Instead, he walked slowly to the front of the room. He stopped beside me, not behind me, not in front of me, beside me. He faced the audience. Then he took a long breath. My dad's wrong. Victor stared at him. Logan. No, his voice shook. Not this time. He looked toward me briefly, then back at everyone else. I challenged Mr. Morgan because I knew he wouldn't fight. I wanted people laughing. I thought that made me look strong. Nobody spoke. I also knew, he swallowed hard, that a lot of my videos weren't honest. Victor interrupted. Enough. Logan ignored him. I've spent years trying to look unbeatable. He laughed bitterly. I forgot there was a difference between looking strong and being someone worth respecting. He turned toward David. I'm sorry. David nodded gently. Then Logan faced me. When you had me pinned, he paused, you could have embarrassed me. You didn't. You let me stand up by myself. His eyes were damp now. I didn't understand why. I do now. I felt every eye in the room shift toward me. I simply smiled. Then today was worth it. Victor quietly walked out before the meeting ended. Nobody stopped him. There wasn't anything left to say. Life settled down faster than I'd expected. The reporters eventually found another story. The internet found another villain, another hero, another argument. It always does. Logan disappeared from social media for several months. When people finally saw him again, it wasn't inside a cage or standing beside expensive cars. It was at the Franklin Youth Martial Arts Center, volunteering, teaching beginner classes. The first rule posted on the wall caught my attention when David and I stopped by one Saturday morning. Respect your partner more than you respect winning. I smiled. Maybe he'd finally written something worth remembering. Victor took much longer. Several business relationships ended, others survived. People gradually forgave him. But they never looked at him quite the same way again. Money could repair buildings. It couldn't rebuild trust overnight. These days, my mornings look much like they did before all of this happened. I still wake before sunrise. My knees still complain every time the weather changes. David still insists his coffee tastes better when I make it. And every spring I still spend too much time talking to tomato plants that never answer back. Sometimes neighbors ask whether I miss my old career. I always smile. No, because the truth is, I never miss teaching people how to fight. I miss teaching people why they shouldn't have to. Growing older has taught me something 19 years in the military never fully could. Real strength isn't measured by how many battles you win. It's measured by how many you have the wisdom to avoid, and by whether you can still stand up when one finally finds you. If you've ever had to stand up to someone who underestimated you later in life, I'd truly enjoy hearing your story. Thank you for spending this time with me. Until next time, take good care of yourself.